Hey there and welcome back to Rimworld. My name is Pete and today we complete another episode of our Rimworld Anomaly Sea Ice Challenge with the transhumanist paragons of Pandroth. Last time we left off after defeating our very first Apocryton mechs and after Elpis, colony leader and psycasting prodigy, returned home, and with the entire colony back together on the sea ice, it's time to prepare for the endgame. First up on the list is an overhaul to our research and workshop area, so that we can upgrade the number of high-tech research benches from 1 to 3. There are a handful of late-game research projects that I'd still like to unlock, Ultra Mech Tech being among them, and since they all take a considerable amount of research points, this should help us get there a little faster. And so this overhaul is pretty much what we spent the episode's entire first day on. We can also put up a wall here to our storage room to help keep temperatures in check. After all, those affect research and crafting speed too. Conveniently, this also allows us to slightly expand our ritual room, hopefully leading to an increase in its impressiveness. We can help out a bit more by replacing the steel columns with jade and having Lauren try to make some more impressive Neil sheets, which altogether makes the room quite a bit nicer. We are also sending Elpis into the gene extractor next. Our leader is of course not exempt from transhumanist duties, and those include sharing the best of your gene pool with the rest of the colony. Nightshade then shows us the big downside of the high life meme we added last episode. Since our colonists are now all regularly snorting yayo, some of them might occasionally become addicted. But truthfully, that's probably just a logical extension of the high life meme. After all, if your ideology already demands it, why not allow your body to crave it too? Up next on the list of things to do then is the construction of some floodlights. As you can see, these emit light in a huge radius, much larger than regular lamps or wall lamps, and are therefore perfectly suited to protect ourselves against the unnatural darkness event, which caused us quite a bit of trouble recently, so we're putting up 4 of them, 1 on each corner of the base. Together with the arrival of a bulk goods trade ship, we then extract the coagulate gene from Elpis, definitely a very useful one, but sadly also not usable without being homogenic, and unless we get really lucky, chances are we won't be able to isolate that before the end of the series. The trade ship here at least does not have it. They actually have surprisingly little that is of interest, so ultimately we just end up selling them a small amount of furs. And furs, but more importantly also meat, we could use more of, so let's have Elpis perform a draw animals ritual with a ritual quality of 100%. The meat will be essential for us to continue our chem fuel production. The animals then a small group of Arctic wolves. I had hoped for Muffalo, but you can't always get lucky. Either way, we are sending out our ghouls to take care of this one, and as you can see, Brock especially has no trouble soloing 3 Arctic wolves. The guy is an absolute menace in combat, and still I think you can technically create an even more powerful version. At our machining table, we then create some incendiary shells in anticipation of a potential next entity we might encounter. Because Elpis is back, and that means it's time to live, love, and provoke the void. The list of entities we have not yet discovered is actually very slim at this point, so chances are we get exactly what I'm expecting we will. And indeed, as we are informed that we've got something incoming from below, my suspicions are confirmed. We are now about to meet what is arguably one of the most interesting entities in the entire game. And there we go, a Fleshmass Heart has emerged, an enormous piece of flesh mass that will grow additional flesh mass tentacles all over the map, and this growth will rapidly expand, and if not stopped in time, can eventually consume the entire map. Now thankfully, right next to the Fleshmass Heart, a nerve bundle has just spawned, in addition to various flesh beasts that we're now sending out the Nocusphere against. On top of that, Lauren is manning the mortar and will now fire an incendiary shell at the flesh mass. Even if it doesn't hit the nerve bundle directly, this is still a good way of taking it out, as the flesh mass surrounding it is pretty flammable, so it should only be a matter of time until the nerve bundle catches fire too. The Nochiosphere then doing some good work against the flesh beasts as we are interrupted by a research message. We have unlocked the Revenant Invisibility project and thus now only have one project left to study: atmospheric heaters, bioferrite-powered devices capable of heating up an entire region. Out on the sea ice, that could definitely be of interest, so let's get on with it and then watch the Nochiosphere unleash a bit more carnage. Unfortunately though, we can also see that our burning strategy is not working as expected. On top of that, the Fleshmass has grown a spitter. This thing can only shoot once every few hours, but it has a considerable radius and great splash damage too, so probably for the best if we stay far away from it. The Nochiosphere's onslaught then ends and it vanishes, this time for good. Probably a bit of a waste, since these flesh beasts only stay near the flesh mass and do not directly attack us, but we needed to get rid of the Nochiosphere at some point during the next 5 days anyway, and this seemed like the safest option. Now at this point there are two things we need to take care of. First, we've got a flesh tendril growing a bit too close for comfort to our base, so let's prune it and all flesh beasts roaming the area as well. While the flesh cannot bypass our walls, it can take down doors, which could cause trouble. And while we're out here, we might as well also take down a larger group of flesh beasts before we then set our sights on task number 2, destroying that nerve bundle. I've had more success burning it away in other playthroughs. This time it did not work as I had hoped, so let's use regular old gunfire after the ghouls have baited the spitter to fire its load. Destroying the nerve bundle then drops a neural lump, and because it's bordering water, we can easily access it by skipping Elpis over there. He can then study the lump while our pawns keep killing flesh beasts. Similarly to the flesh samples we needed to study in the past to find a metal horror, studying these neural lumps eventually unlocks an option to destroy the heart, but we need 3 of them for that, and at the moment there are no further nerve bundles that we could destroy. So back to the base we go, and now begins the waiting game. The Fleshmass Heart will switch in and out of growth cycles, increasing the size of its flesh mass before resting and repeating the entire process. What we need to do during all of this is to ensure that our base does not get completely walled in, our ghouls are perfect for that job, while also remaining patient as we wait for another nerve bundle to grow. So let's quickly go through the more exciting things happening during that time. Elpis manages to capture a tough spike just as Lauren finishes a legendary work. From time to time we take brief peeks outside the base to kill any flesh beasts that get too close, which conveniently also ensures a steady supply of twisted meat, and we begin to wall in our steel deep drill as well as the grand architect structure. Like I said, the flesh mass cannot penetrate walls, so in theory, if you're quick enough, it is also possible to wall in the flesh mass itself and thus contain it to a small area of the map. In my experience though, on regular and larger sized maps that is not really needed. I found it easier to just protect your base. Here we go then with another downside of the high life meme. Children taking yayo are of course a bit more susceptible to overdosing. So perhaps we should make some slightly weaker stuff for them. Some Psychi tea, for example, should be much less dangerous. The sea ice is then struck by a psychic soothe, increasing the already pretty high mood of our male colonists, and a few hours later Vulek finishes the last section of wall to protect our steel deep drill. At this point then we witness another unique mechanic about this entity. Once too much flesh has been destroyed, the flesh mass will spawn additional flesh beasts. This is the main reason why we are not relentlessly shredding this thing to pieces, as unlike the ones just roaming the area, these flesh beasts will come after you. As you can see though, with our 4 ghouls we managed to fend them off quite easily. And so the waiting and walling ourselves in continues, until we are eventually informed that a new nerve bundle has appeared, a good 30 hours after we destroyed the last one. Once again, we try to set fire to it using an incendiary shell, but also once again it does not quite hit the target, and after a flesh mass spitter then grows in range of our walls, we once again send out the ghoul police. And why stop there if we might as well have them fight their way through to the nerf bundle directly? As you can see, the fire has actually gone out on its own. The nerf bundle, meanwhile, another quick study for colony leader Elpis. So then, that's number 2 of 3 taken care of. For the moment, we can therefore send everyone back inside, just as Vulek finishes the wall around the architect structure. The Fleshmass itself has at this point taken over most of the northeastern part of the map, and while we wait for it to produce that third nerf bundle, we might as well have Vulek begin another death rest. So far, it does not appear as if we really need him to fight this. And so, an uneventful night passes by as the Fleshmass keeps growing, but apart from the occasional flesh beast wandering too close, it does not really harm us. So we might as well focus on other pursuits for the time being, such as another skip abduction. Who knows, maybe we can get another useful slave out of it, or at the very least another ghoul. The abductee then is quite clearly an impet, and as such really not all that well suited for life out on the sea ice. His stats then also quickly confirm that he will not become a slave. The tough trait in combination with double passion in the melee skill should make for an excellent ghoul. As soon as we've got him in captivity, we are also going to plug him into the gene extractor. Despite a perfect ritual quality, he will still remain in a brief coma, so we might as well make use of that. 4 hours later then, we are informed that the Fleshmass has grown another nerf bundle, and this one is very accessible. And just as we send out our ghoul squad, we also receive a quest. Taking care of 2 horses with blood rot for 5 days shouldn't be too difficult. Admittedly, at first sight, the rewards here do not really seem to be worth the hassle. That is, until we check the gene pack reward here and find that one of the genes inside is Goju's Impervious, complete immunity to Goju's addiction and overdose. And well, for a high life colony, I can't imagine anything better than that. So I think we'll accept this once we've dealt with the Fleshmass. Taking out the nerf bundle, meanwhile, is a swift process, and Elpis is also already moving in to analyze the flesh lump. This will then finally be number 3, and as expected, it now unlocks the ability to destroy the Fleshmass Heart. Now, unfortunately, in order to do so, we need to be able to touch it. On one hand, that's made a bit easier by the water here, allowing Elpis easy access. But perhaps I did get a bit greedy and exposed him to the spitter in the process. Either way, it's just an acid burn, and as a sanguiphage he should recover quickly, so let's blast open a path and induce a cardiac overload. And there we go. First it begins to convulse, and a few seconds later the Fleshmass Heart bursts and collapses, and as a result the rest of the Fleshmass will now slowly begin to die off. It actually was not necessary to pull Elpis away from it. In fact, had he stayed close, he could have captured the Fleshmass nucleus immediately. The game actually treats this as a separate entity, and also only unlocks the Fleshmass-related research once it is captured. That research project is mutation weaponry, which we want to switch to immediately, as it allows us to craft objects with which we can turn others into flesh beasts. That sounds like good fun to me. And it also leaves the atmospheric heater as a thematically fitting finale. From our impet prisoner, we then gain the very fast runner gene, in my opinion perhaps one of the most broadly useful genes in the entire game, and we are also not done with him yet. Up next he's going into the subcore soft scanner. In the meantime, our 4 ghouls decide to take on 2 bulb freaks without any backup whatsoever. Unfortunately, the flesh beasts that have been created as part of the Fleshmass Heart do not just vanish once the heart is destroyed. They remain until we or something else takes care of them, so even after the heart is destroyed, the threat is far from over. Now at this point we're assembling a gene pack, one that I think is the ideal base for a ghoul, at least based on the genes we have. Strong melee, reduced pain, and cold super tolerant all strike me as extremely useful, and I would add very fast runner too if our impet did not already have it. To balance these out, we'll add unattractive, awful animals, yes, violence disabled, and also a combination gene pack of heat tolerant, Goju's dependent, and a standard body. Named after a Patreon supporter of mine, this xenotype will now be named Angarat, and we'll have our research specialist Nazim begin its creation immediately, just as the Psychic Soothe comes to an end. The rest of our pawns meanwhile begin to clean up the flesh beasts. As you can see, it takes quite some time for all of that flesh mass to die off. Nonetheless, we want to take care of all remaining stragglers fairly quickly, otherwise they might cause trouble for the next caravan. As we then take a brief look at our impet prisoner, who's getting a lung and kidney removed, we also have a high-intensity psychic drone strike the sea ice, which is obviously terrible for everyone, but especially so for young Elpis, who now suffers a -80 mood penalty. Time to ingest what I believe to be the first mind-numb serum of this series. As you can see, this essentially neutralizes every single negative and positive thought he has, in turn hopefully ensuring that he will not suffer a mental break. A short moment later, Nazim then finishes the Angarat xenogerm. The only problem is we can't implant it into our prisoner, as their ideology has a preferred xenotype already set, and they will not accept any modifications to it. Now, I'll be honest, for colonists I'd find that reasonable, but for prisoners and slaves perhaps not so much. After all, we have psychically abducted him, extracted his genes, used his brain to make a mechanoid subcore, and just harvested 2 of his organs. I find it a little strange that this is where the game draws the line. Now don't worry, I have a solution already in mind, but first we'll clean up some more flesh beasts. For the moment our prisoner is unconscious anyway. Scattered in small groups all across the map, the remaining flesh beasts then thankfully do not offer too much resistance. Nonetheless, it takes us most of the evening until the last of them finally go down. So then let's take care of our prisoner, and obviously the easiest way would be to just convert him. However, with a certainty of 64%, that could take a few more days. So here's what we'll do instead. Let's perform a brain wipe ritual. Mostly intended to allow you to recruit unwaveringly loyal prisoners, this ritual does have other purposes too. Most notably, it will reduce the target's certainty in their own ideology to 0%. So shortly after Corinna overdoses for the second time in this video, the brain wipe ritual is complete, our prisoner goes into yet another short coma, but once he wakes up we should have little trouble converting him to the paragons of Pandroth. We are also using his comatose state to already perform a few early modifications, namely the installation of a stone skin gland and 2 power claws. The stone skin gland in particular will make this guy an absolute tank. Keep in mind that he also already possesses the tough trait, and that we're also giving him the reduced pain gene on top of that. The psychic drone then thankfully comes to an end without anyone going into a murderous rage. All of that twisted meat we've collected also allows us to restart our chem fuel production, and speaking of meat, we've got more of that coming in, this time in the form of a few Arctic foxes. No challenge of course for the Ghoul police, who I guess can now add hunting to their list of services too, but that's not the only way we obtain meat from now on. The Fleshmass nucleus we have captured also now regularly drops twisted meat, which makes it the only entity to actually produce anything in captivity, other than bioferrite of course. Eventually then, our impet's brain wipe coma finally wears off, and so we are now immediately sending in Volek for the conversion. And there we go, the paragons of Pandroth have gained another believer, and this now in turn also allows us to perform the necessary gene modifications. So then, Nightshade successfully implants the Angarat xenogerm. The results, yes, another brief coma, his third one in his short stay with us, but just one more small step and all of that will shortly be forgotten, as Nightshade is already coming back with all the materials needed to perform a Ghoul infusion. In just a few seconds you can then also see why I had no trouble giving this guy the violence disabled gene. As soon as he's turned into a Ghoul, violence is all that he lives for. Of course, he has also earned the rights to a new name, Arbuzak, this one a naming rights supporter from my YouTube members. Yes, channel memberships are a thing now, in case you hadn't noticed. And well, I think Arbuzak here is going to be quite powerful. His skills, traits and genes already make for a great Ghoul base. Add on to that a stone skin gland, 2 power claws, and in a short moment also Ghoul barbs and plating, and I think our Ghoul police is about to gain a very useful 5th member. So while we wait for the last 2 body parts to be installed, we might as well now accept the horse's quest. Like I said, we'll do so in exchange for that gene pack, and we'll rope the 2 horses inside with our muffalos. Sure, it will get a bit tight in there, but it's only for 5 days. Ghoul Arbuzek then receives Ghoul Barbs as his 5th and final upgrade. Damage-wise, he will probably not quite be on the level of Brock, but to make up for that, he should be able to take considerably more damage. And so, with our colony steadily growing, even if it's only in the form of ghouls, I think we have made a good point to make the cut for today. At this point, we only have 1 more entity left to discover, and we'll take care of that next time. Until then, we've got some more fan art, both pieces here by Gracie, who has frequently blessed this series with submissions. My merchandise provider unfortunately does not offer pajamas, otherwise you'd find this one in the Pete Complete store ASAP. As always, if you have something to submit of your own, then feel free to send me an email to pete@petecomplete.com. Alternatively, for Patreon supporters or channel members, there's also the exclusive Pete Complete Discord. And with that, let's wrap things up for today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or become a channel member or Patreon supporter yourself. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.